Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's Pantheon Podcast, the show where we talk about Smite, esports, and everything relating to the game. My name's Darkkai3, your host of the Pantheon Podcast, and with me, as always, is AlphaJackal. How you doing, sir?
I am absolutely fantastic, and I hope you are too.
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good now that I've completed some of these damn Celtic quests.
Yeah, I noticed that you were struggling a lot on Twitter and on Discord as well.
I've not been. I have been having a very hard time with those. I'm sure a lot of people have been having a hard time because it's all win quests, and it's so salty. It's unbelievable, you know.
Yeah, but then we can have a whole discussion on the reason why they're win quests and not simply play quests. Because I think it was Ajax or Pompon actually said on Reddit the reasons why they are win quests.
Yeah, Pon did say. Pon was like, we're doing it so people don't F6 at 10, just so we can get the things, to get the wins and stuff, or to get the plays. I mean, I get why they do it, but there are some times where you're there after 8 losses or 7 losses of a warrior with needing 1 win, going, I don't know why I'm bothering, guys. But yes. But yes, we had a Pantheon Podcast after that minor detour. This week we've got a little bit of changes. We've got some Rosterpocalypse action. We have some of the new patch changes for the Season 4 PTS, as Round 2 and Round 3 have happened since the last recording. There are some surprises in there, so you don't want to miss that. And then at the end we've got a little bit of drama, because we all know the Smite community drools over drama. They love it, don't they? They love the drama. But yes, AJ, do you want to start us off with the Rosterpocalypse?
Yeah, it's the term that always comes around at the end of a Smite season. Teams have nothing better to do, so they decide to try out for different teams, try different combinations of people, and see what sticks to the wall. And this season has been no different. Both Europe and North America have seen massive roster changes, more so in Europe than I would have imagined to have seen. But America certainly is no slouch to the changes as well. And kicking things off way back when was the mention of Xenotronics no longer being the mid for Luminosity Gaming.
Yeah, Xenotronics, he did pretty well at Worlds, I feel. But LG obviously feeling... Well, I don't know, was he removed from LG, or did he leave of his own accord, is the big question now.
I think what went around was he was removed from Luminosity. It sucks because he was a big part of the reason why they were struggling during the online portion of the season. But when they went to LANs and when they went to the World Championships, him especially improved massively. And if you compare his performances from the online phase to the performances at Worlds, it was a massive change. It almost looked like a brand new player. And to see that progress then just taken away from him at the end of the season because they didn't get to the finals is a bit disheartening.
It is a shame, but I mean, at the end of the day, you've got performance overall to look at, not just the performance from Worlds. And even though he improved, I mean, did he improve as much as, like, people say Variety at the end of it? Because Variety was playing a complete beast as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, and we do have some news on Variety, obviously, later on. Those of you who do follow the Smite scene will know what it is, but more on that later.
Yep.
And I do have to admit that this Smite World Championships was the one to see the biggest improvements from players in general. I mean, 3 members of Luminosity improved massively when they went to the World Championships. It was Scary Demasked and Xenotronics all had phenomenal World Championship performances compared to the previous. And over in Europe, obviously, we had Variety performing his little heart outs. A couple of members from Energy slightly underperforming to the beginning of the World Championships, but then showing a whole new level that we've never seen from them before later on in the tournament. And it could partly become down to the crowds, hyping them up and spurring them on to levels they didn't think they had. But at the same point, you have to think, this is probably what they are capable of by themselves. And you have to look at that when you're trying to decide whether it's better for you to look for a new team or better for you to stick with the original roster.
Yeah. I mean, Xeno, Mast, and they all did... They finally managed to get to Barrett and Jeff's level, didn't they, really? I feel. I'd love to see what happened with LG if Barrett wasn't sick again. It's like his curse, isn't it? Being sick at LANs every day all the time.
it's Barracuda and Timmy. They are always sick at every LAN.
You can get it though. There's a lot of people there, isn't there? But I mean, they managed to play up to their level, but I'm guessing Luminosity feel they can do a little bit better. And whether this ties in with the information about ALG is a big question, considering who it involves.
Yes, it would. Well, Luminosity Gaming got rid of their mid. Allegiance have replaced their mid laner already. MLC Stealth has been taken off the team. If you want to see some of the reasons why, we can put out a very informative video. There was a couple of Reddit posts as well detailing exactly what went on from both points of view. So I highly recommend you to check those out. But he's replaced by Met Yankee. And not just that, Allegiance have also signed their team to a 1-year contract extension.
Oh, another year. Okay.
Obviously, full-on congratulations to them.
Yeah, they managed. So obviously, their brand quite impressed by their performance and liking what they saw enough to give them another contract. So that's good news for them overall. So yeah, Met Yankee's actually signing up for a good deal there, I feel.
Yeah, just coming into the team straight away, getting a 1-year contract from a well-respected esports organization. It's a win-win there.
It is a win-win. Yeah, it is win. I mean, it could also be a win for MLC because we don't know this yet, but there's a chance that we could be seeing the old part of the old Cloud9 getting back together. You know, Barra, Jeff.
There has been a rumor going around, and it was sort of slipped up by Barracuda that this rumor started out as. It may not be MLC joining Luminosity. It may be Baskin joining as mid.
Oh, okay. Isn't Baskin a solo player?
Baskin is a solo. They're probably the best solo laner in the world right now. But they were talking on stream, and I think Jeff Hindler said, "Isn't it surprising that only 2 out of 5 members of our team have a license?" And then Barracuda simply said, "Well, Baskin is," and then he just pauses and realized what he's done.
Maybe he did it to troll. You never know.
I know that. I was hoping you'd continue that thought and then just just try to have a look at chat to see you got baited, just to try and pull it off. But no, it seems to be the most concrete evidence so far that Luminosity are bringing Baskin into the fray, whether it is as a mid laner or as a solo laner, and they're moving Scary D to mid.
Interesting. Okay, do you reckon Scary D will be okay in mid? I mean, he's a good player.
I think that there are 2 trains of thoughts to this, both of which you could say either one could play mid. You either put a very experienced player from the solo lane into the mid lane, because they will have this sort of thought process that you need to transition roles a lot easier, or you keep one of the strongest solo laners in the world in the solo lane. Scary D, who did have a phenomenal world stage, as we said many times already, but he didn't have a particularly good online phase. You move him into the mid lane and see if he can't repeat that same process again, because It did it over the course of a split, and now they have an entire year ahead of them, potentially, to try and get him to the level where he can perform at Worlds again. So both trains of thoughts, I think, are valid, but I would much prefer to see Baskin still in that solo lane.
I agree. I'd love to see Baskin stay in the solo lane. He is a beast in the solo. And, I mean, like you said, Scary does have the entire year to transfer his skills from solo into mid. And I reckon, from what we've seen about Scary D, I reckon that's the best bet for them. Put him in the mid and see what he can do.
Because he does phenomenally well in a team-based environment. And you do get that in the mid role from a very early stage of the game. It's pretty much you going around with the support and jungler consistently throughout the entirety of the game, and he can do well to set up plays or even be the playmaker himself.
I mean, something we've seen fairly recently as well is we used to say solo island, didn't we? Solo island used to be the thing. You never saw anyone. It was just you as a warrior against the other warrior on the enemy team, slapping each other a little bit, and then waiting until you get to mid to late game and then rotating. Whereas now we've seen it more of jungles and supports spend a lot of time in the right side of a jungle. So if anyone's going to translate into mid and be able to make the transition, it's going to be solo laners now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's more of the ADCs that seem to be the big worry right now for the Season 4 meta. in terms of how cheap their builds are looking to be, as well as how much power per gold spend that they're going to receive through their items as well.
Especially
the amount of farm that they're going to get, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you consider as well that Wind Demon is more powerful than it was. So it's gonna be interesting to see this year. But I know we've been speaking a lot about the world's performances by everyone, and I know that a fair number of people have a similar thing with performances, and it's sad to say some players played really well. And some didn't really play as well as we feel they could. And it would appear that Obey felt the same regarding Frezzy or Panda-like, didn't they?
Yeah. Again, another twit longer. This time it was by Captain Twig. Sort of highlights some of the issues internally with Obey. And again, I highly recommend you go try and read that if you can. But it highlights the issue of mentality. And this is something which a lot of people watching the game and not playing it at a high competitive level don't see. It's this behind-the-scenes demon which can make a team of superstars succeed or fail from the get-go. And it seems to be what happened here with Obey. They got to the finals of Worlds, everything seemed to look fine, everything seemed to look good. And then the first two games, they just got absolutely decimated. And it really affected Frezzy more so than any other player.
I mean, when you have that sort of thing happen as well, even when you consider that they were playing against one of possibly the best team in the world, proven to be the best team in the world, actually, NRG. But it can get into your head, and if you've not got the right frame of mind, it can majorly affect not only how you play, but if you're suddenly... I don't know, if you're suddenly being a little bit less caring about the game, that can also affect your teammates fairly heavily. And by the sounds of it, that's what Obey were feeling with Panda-like, or otherwise known as Frezzy. So
yeah, I mean, there's always the opportunity for you to have a bit of fun during a competitive game and a very serious set like at Worlds. But
I mean, I don't
you have to you have to make sure that you're doing it to the expected level, not to anything beyond that. And the expected level will be different depending on the people you surround yourself with.
I mean, could he have been a bit fed up playing Sylvanas as well, do you reckon? I mean...
I reckon it might have been Frezzy being a bit stubborn, a bit... I don't like the word, but a bit trollish, trying to pick Sylvanas again and again and again.
But more of a I will make this work sort of thing.
Yeah, a very, very stubborn sort of pick. And then when it worked out the third game, he just... rolls with it the fourth game because it worked out in the third game. But again, that's a conversation for an entirely different time.
Yeah,
but it affects people in his team massively because they were there to win. They were there to play at the highest level, at their maximum potential to win Worlds.
Yep. And if you're not playing to win in that situation, should you be playing? It's a shame to see him go, but I can see entirely why Obey would see for him to go. And also, more Obey news, actually. The guy who was playing like an absolute beast at Worlds, and we keep saying it, and we keep saying his name, Variety, left Obey of his own will.
Yeah, he left. They finished second at Worlds. He was definitely the superstar of the team.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And he just decided to get up and leave after Frezzy got kicked. And he went to form a new team, which we are going to get onto very, very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And it will tie into one of the news stories a bit later on. And all I can say is best of luck to the guy. He obviously deserves to try and find the right home to hone his skills even more and possibly even get to the next World Championships and win it.
Yep, and judge it from what we can see here, I get the feeling he's going to be able to get there. I mean, he's got some really good things ahead of him, and he's a really good player. He improved a lot the past year, so he's gonna do really well. And the question asked about Variety leaving Obey was does he feel? Some people thought he was better than the team themselves, and it sounds weird, but to an extent, I think he's right. Variety was playing like I don't think I've ever seen Variety play at that level before, and his team just wasn't able to keep up. I mean, Panda playing like he was, Variety was doing his best to carry that up, but I mean, I'm interested to see how this goes with Variety's new move.
Yeah, it's a team which so far has had success in the open bracket week 1, the second week of the open bracket. At the time of recording this episode, is currently ongoing, in which they are playing in. So obviously, best of luck to them, or congratulations, or commiserations, depending on the results.
Delete as appropriate.
Later. Yeah.
I can't do that before we put this live, annoyingly, so I'm not going to be able to know what to what to do. I'm just going to leave it in. Yeah. Commiserations or congratulations to if you win or lose. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
But leading into this as well, we've now got Bipolar Method, formerly Orbit, formerly Paradigm. So it's formerly. Kiro, Fred, and Trix have both left.
They've been together for about 2 years now, the team.
It's surprising, isn't it? Because this team has been together for ages. Like, the former Paradigm team has been together for such a long time. It feels weird to say that 2 of their members have left. You know?
Yeah.
And it didn't... Well, from what we saw, it didn't seem to be any... bad blood between the team. I feel they just had a better offer, and they saw the opportunity and took it. I mean, but when you consider as well, they did really well, considering they were the ones that got LG into the world tournament. So I mean, they're a good team, but it's just a shame to see them split up. But I'm hoping that Cuvo and Trix have a good future ahead of them.
Well, this has been the second year in a row that the team as a whole hasn't gone to the finals of the World Championships. On their first attempt, they managed to get through to the quarterfinals, I think it was. And then last year, they didn't even make it into the World Championships. They fell at the Super Regionals hurdle in the group stage. And it just leads you to believe, is this team going backwards, or is it a team that's evolving and struggling to keep up with the times? At which point, you do have to consider your options. You do have to try and find passages new to get yourself to the point where you can challenge for the world title. This is exactly what all these changes that we are discussing here on the Rosterpocalypse are doing. They're trying to build teams which, over the course of the year, can build up strength, can build up strategies and synergy that can get them the World Championship.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider it at the end of the day, sure, you've got a team that you want to play stuff with, and you've been doing well with them. But if you're consistently not being able to hit that pinnacle that you want to hit, sometimes you've just got to think and do something for yourself instead of a team. And obviously, Cuvo and Trix have hit that point where they're going to do something now which they feel works for them, and not necessarily for Bipolar Method. And again, sometimes you've got to do that, and you can't halt your own progress for something which obviously isn't going to work.
And yes, people are going to have their feelings hurt, and yes, you're still going to be friends with them even afterwards. And it sucks to just go up to your friends and say, "Look, I want to team with somebody else for the next year from now on." It's a difficult decision to make, but if you want to be successful, the hard decisions are the ones that you have to make, and unfortunately, it's what's happened here.
I mean, we saw it last year as well, didn't we? When were they still Cloud9?
Yeah, they were Cloud9.
Yeah, where they split quite drastically, didn't they? So Jeff and Bauer obviously wanted to stay together because it's Jeff and Bauer, man. And that who are the others? You had MLC in mid. And then
you also had Anidster and Baskin.
And then also Anidster and Baskin went one way.
Yeah.
Jeff and Bauer obviously didn't want to go that way. They went another way, and that left MLC in the middle having to choose, didn't it? And I think even now they're still pretty close and good friends. But it's just a shame to see that happen. But again, like we said, you have to make that decision sometimes.
Yeah, the decision to change a team can be one that you have to take. A decision to leave the game altogether is another one that every pro will have to make eventually. And looks like the time has been called on his career for Jiffy, also known as World Edit. He may have known him as the jungler for Elevate during the fall split last season. He has decided to call time on his Smite career.
That's a shame, isn't it? It's always saddening to hear when someone has left the game entirely. But again, when you're playing at a high level, I guess burnout is a pretty drastic thing, isn't it? I mean, I got burnt out a year ago, and I just left for a while. And I mean, there's always a chance that they'll come back, and it's always nice to see when they return to the scene. Like we've seen it happen before. We saw Moex disappear for a bit and come back. We've seen Game Hunter disappear and come back. I mean, whatever happens in the future, I think AJ agrees here that we hope it all works out well for Jiffy, and I look forward to seeing what happens in the future, whether he decides to play another game or enter the world of corporate, which is not as fun as Smite.
There is one thing which I will have to say here and now, is that if Jiffy does decide to come back into Smite, does decide to try and get to the professional level again, his attitude absolutely must change. Because after the gauntlet had finished and it was Dignitas that was going to be the final team from Europe going to the Super Regionals, he just went absolutely out on Twitter onto Dignitas, and especially onto Suntouch himself. And he said some things on Twitter which I'm not even going to repeat out here on the podcast. And if you're a professional player, if you are setting a standard and an example, you absolutely cannot do that.
No.
And I don't know if it was him leaving by himself or it was him not getting any offers that then made him leave Smite.
Mm-hmm.
But if he does come back, it has to change. It has to be a new Jiffy. It has to be somebody with the same skill, with the same sort of attributes, but with a different mentality towards the game and to losing especially.
I think sometimes as well you need to have that attitude, don't you? And a lot of brands and teams will be like, okay, you're a good player, but your attitude stinks, and we can't play with that. Or like you're advertising yourself in the grand scheme. When you're at that higher level, your attitude can make or break how you go. And I mean, like you said, at a certain point you've got to grow up. And never know if he does come back. Hopefully he will have. I mean, he's a pretty young player, isn't he, Jiffy?
I believe he was sort of like in the prime of a video gamer's career, so like just very, very early 20s.
Early 20s. So I mean, there's a lot of immaturity in that age. So you never know. You may see him improve. You may see him in another game. You may see him back in Smite. Yeah, the future is a wondrous thing, and you have no idea what's going to be around the corner for you.
And the future looks definitely bright for Variety's new team, aptly named Variety's new team.
Unless you're Hi-Rez, which point it's Variety's new team, Variety's new team, Variety's new team.
Yeah, just any combination of Variety and Y, and you'll have Variety's new team, which is consisting of Cuva, Fred of the Jungle, Zyros in mid, Trix tank support, Arkil, ADC, and of course Variety himself in the solo lane. And it is an incredibly strong roster.
It's a very good roster. We saw them play last week at the open bracket, didn't we? And have to say, like, there are a few teething issues, as always with any new team. It takes time to get that synergy flowing, but that team, it definitely has a lot of potential, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes.
I can't wait to see them perform in the SPL because they look like they're going to be taking the open bracket quite comfortably, which when they'll go into relegations, and I do think that they'll pass through relegations into the SPL. Failing that, or maybe even outside of that, they could get the spot that Sanguine currently have in the SPL because Arkle was the captain.
Oh, okay.
But it's currently owned by Sanguine, and they're deciding whether to get their contracts renewed or not. It's a long story that might resolve itself by the time this episode comes out, might not. But it'll be resolved within the next 2 weeks because we'll have our 8 teams for the Smite Pro League then.
So we could be interested. This could be a pretty interesting time for them. Otherwise, they're going to have to fight their way up, aren't they?
Yeah, but I definitely see them making it into the Smite Pro League, and I can't wait to see them there. Like you said, there was a couple of teething issues in the first week of the open bracket, especially in the semi-finals against Dutch Myrmidons. A team which looked a bit mismatched, it looked a bit rough around the edges. You could honestly say that Dutch Myrmidons should have won that third game.
They were playing their hearts out, Dutch Myrmidon. They were playing really well, I felt. They definitely gave Variety's new team a run for their money.
I understand. watching it as outside spectator, watching it as somebody analyzing the game, you could very clearly see that there were many, many times during that third game where Dutch Myrmidons could have won that game, where they probably even should have won that game. But the sort of natural instinct of these SPL players kicked in during one team fight, during one engagement, and it just completely decimated Dutch Myrmidons to the point where Variety's new team then won the game off that one play.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the experience from this team is going to carry them through their early stages together as a team, to the point where they then start to build up synergy and then start to build up their strategies together as a unit in time for the start of the Pro League.
Yeah. I mean, Dutch Myrmidons as well, did you not feel they gave them a bit too... You always give respect to your opponent, because your opponent can always do something you don't expect, and you always want to be careful of that. But did they not give too much respect to Variety's new team when they could have finished several times? Do you feel?
I feel like there was... It was just a bit of a lack of experience, because a couple of players on the team, like Death Panther, they were playing new roles at a competitive level. Death Panther has always been known as a support player, and this open bracket was probably his first time playing mid at a competitive level in a long time, or maybe even ever. So there was obviously those sort of issues going on as well. But to still bring it to Variety's new team and possibly even win the set, it shows that they also have the opportunity to get into a good chance of getting in with the SPL as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing how they go as well, those guys.
Yeah, I can't wait for relegations, which are coming up very, very shortly.
There are going to be some amazing matches, I feel. We're going to see some damn good games. And I know we're going to continue seeing damn good games from Energy. And on that note, as you mentioned, we have had Zeros joining Variety's new team, which then means that Zeros is no longer the coach for Energy. Now, the question is, are Energy going to get a coach? Do they need one? Is the big question. Is there anyone that would actually be a good fit for Energy as coach?
Well, they could always go back to Youngbei if he doesn't get any team offers, because he was looking out for team offers, was Youngbei, which is sort of like why they brought in Hi-Rez for the World Championship. But now that he's gone over to Variety's new team, they might try to bring in Youngbei again if he doesn't get anything. And overall, it's still a win-win scenario for Energy, because I don't honestly think that they need a coach per se, but they could do with like that sixth eye, looking over games and finding those niggling strategies if there comes a time when Energy starts to struggle.
Sometimes you do need those other pair of eyes, don't you? You can't see it. Sometimes you can't see the wood through the trees, and it probably gets a bit frustrating not being able to see where you're going wrong, and having that coach position, being able to just go, look, this is where you went wrong here. Maybe we should try this strategy next time. And you know exactly what it's like being a coach, don't you? So
yeah. Well, not for the past couple of weeks, because PCS doesn't allow spectating, which is a nice thing for us.
Really?
Yeah.
It makes sense why it doesn't, but
yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I'm interested to see how this new season's going to go in the grand scheme. The new season's going to be.
Yeah, same here.
I'm looking forward. I haven't been on PTS yet. I haven't had the time. So
it after the round 2 and round 3 changes, season 4 is in a very, very good state, in my opinion. But as we said at the beginning of the show, we'll be talking about those in a bit. Actually, very close to there. We're on to one of the next points, which is Suntouch. Hunter player for Dignitas is going to be on a hiatus from competitive Smite, focusing more on his streaming and outside of Smite's life, as it were, and just trying to find his identity. He may come back in the future, he said. He may not, but for now, he is not looking for a team.
I mean, he's a pretty popular streamer at the moment, isn't he? I mean, he's constantly one of the top 2 or 3 people streaming Smite at that point in time. He has a ton of subscribers and viewers constantly. So, I mean, it's a logical progression to go over to streaming full time. But you know, he may come back. He's hoping. He's a good player.
He's a good player. He's a good personality, and he's good for the Smite scene as a whole. To have that sort of bankable player to come in and bring some views and bring some hype and excitement around.
Yeah, I think I've seen a fair few people who even if you've never played Smite, they'll tune into his stream because he's that nice a person to watch. So
yeah.
So he's he's not on hiatus from Smite. He's just on hiatus from pro life. And I think sometimes you feel you've got to take a step back and do your own thing for a bit. And I think he's found that for now, and he seems to be enjoying what he's doing.
Yeah, and I can respect him for just trying to prolong his Smite career by just taking a small break now, because if you just continue on in one long block, you run the risk of burning out faster.
You do.
If you take like a small break here and a small break there, you can prolong it 2 or even 3 years, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you don't want to burn out. Don't burn out, guys. It's not good. And then continuing on from players taking a step back, we've got Drelo, formerly of Flashpoint. He has left.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about this one. It seems to be that the entirety of the Flashpoint roster has disbanded. So obviously there's going to be that free spot in the North American SPL for a new team to come in and sort of take the reins of that spot. I'm not sure how it's going to go down, but obviously they were an enjoyable team to watch. They barely missed out on getting to the World Championships by virtue of not beating Orbit in their final game. And all of the players as a whole, they have the potential within them to be playing at the top level. Not just on this middle of the pack roster. They all have the opportunity to play up from there on in. And hopefully they do find teams which allow that to happen.
Yep. I mean, there's always good players, aren't there? And they've always got an opportunity to carry on. So he's hoping that's what happens in the near future. You never know. Keep your eyes peeled, guys. Keep your eyes peeled. That's what you got to do.
And one of our final bits of Rosterpocalypse news is Marauder. He was the enemy solo laner. He has also, much like Jiffy, taken a step back from Smite and has retired from competitive play.
And again, like we said, it's sad to watch people retire. But sometimes, again, when you feel that's the thing you've got to take, you take that. And I think, good luck to whatever he does in the future. Whether it's Smite or anything else. Not Smite, any other game, But yeah, it's a shame to see him go. And it's Enemy in general. Enemy, have they got many more people coming in?
They haven't announced the roster just yet, but there is talking of this sort of pseudo SPL, pseudo Challenger Cup roster being formed together for the next season, which would involve Pain Deviant as their coach.
Yeah, but it has actually been is actually official, isn't it? So Pain Deviant is the coach now instead of their support. So that's an interesting one. I mean, you see a lot of players go into coach, don't you, and then just carry on with what they were doing. But I always felt Pain Deviant was always going to be like a stuck part to Enemy's roster rather than going into coach.
Well, he's still part of the roster. He'll be the coach / sub, I believe, but.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, his insights from a support player's and captain's perspective can now be applied to the team in general, which I do think can benefit Enemy in a positive way, depending on who they bring in, provided they listen to each other and go ahead and be a unit, surrounding themselves with the advice given to them by each other, especially by Pain. It can be an incredibly strong roster once it's revealed. If you're a SPL team and you haven't revealed your roster yet, please reveal your rosters.
It just means we don't have to sit here trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Pain Deviant has worked wonders with the teams he's had, and I'm interested to see how he does in a coach role. And he can only make a team better, no matter what role he's in. He can make the team better. So I'm interested to see what happens with Enemy in the near future.
Yeah, and obviously all the best to Pain as he starts his new role as a coach. And I know for a fact that it can be difficult if your team isn't particularly performing well and there's no reason you can come up with. But you just got to keep on plugging away, and you will eventually find something which you can fix.
Yep. And speaking of things that need to be fixed. Yeah, see what I did there? It's clever. We can now move on to the Season 4 patch changes. So as we discussed last week, we did have the actual Season 4 thing, the 3-hour long damn episode. And we also talked about the round 1 PTS hotfixes. Well, since then, there have been 2 more rounds of hotfixes with some pretty decent changes. Some of these changes are actually going to change things up quite drastically. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through round 2, then we're going to go through the round 3 to give you an idea of what has been changed. We won't dot back and forth to update things as we go. So, right, AJ, do you want to take us through?
All right, so the round 2 PTS hotfixes, out of the 2 hotfixes, this has been the much larger of the 2, and has drastically changed the way the start has been sort of theorized at the players on the PTS. Starting off with the very beginning of the game, the start timer now starts at -1 minute instead of -1 minute 30. Minions still spawn at 0 seconds, and jungle camps still spawn at 30 seconds. So we're just taking 30 seconds off the start time because there was 2 minutes of dead time where we were doing absolutely nothing. It's now only going to be 1:30, which is exactly what we needed.
That was a big complaint, wasn't it? That you'd spend so much time at the beginning of the game doing literally nothing. And that's just, well, I mean, from a casting standpoint, that would be boring to cast. I mean, what can you talk about at the beginning? And then from a player standpoint, that's just boring as well, because what you're doing, just standing there. I mean, you're probably walking around the map, but that's about all you can do.
Yeah, and now we move on to the jungle camps. A couple of changes here. The first change is a general one. Health scaling over time has been decreased from 1.85 multiplier to 1.75 multiplier, just to sort of make sure that the buffs don't get exuberantly tanky over time, because they were getting incredibly difficult to kill as the later the game went on.
I mean, that helps as well, doesn't it? Because it's to fix the issue that was going on with them scaling after deaths, wasn't it?
Yeah, because before there was an unintended feature where they were scaling their health at double the rate when dead than when they were alive, which meant that if you killed a buff consistently, it was becoming more and more tanky than its counterpart over on the other side of the map, which stayed less tanky and easier to kill. Okay. So with this fix, and then this new fix coming in for reducing the multiplier as well, just a bit more to try and make it so it doesn't get overly ridiculous and keeps the pace of the game flowing at a natural rate. It's a good change.
Yep.
And this next change as well also alleviates some more of a frustration factor surrounding one of the best contestable buffs out there right now, the Elder Elementals. And now Bakasura has to have it at 33% health for it to be able to be eaten, rather than the 100% he could do it as before.
That makes it the same as the other big camp monsters, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because he goes up to he eats the big Elder Elemental, which sort of gave the golden experience rewards as a regular buff monster. And it was just so frustrating to play because the Bakasura was on the enemy team, they controlled the fire elementals no matter what, and he always got ahead. He always got himself and his solo laner ahead because of it. Because of how often the elementals spawned and how much experience and gold it gave to the people taking it.
I mean, that's something I didn't think I'd hear for Season 4. That a Bakasura can get ahead and pull his team.
You have to be there for the elemental spawn pretty much every single time. Yeah. When it spawned, bam, you were there to eat it straight away. But it was possible, and it was becoming a slight nuisance on the PTS. It wasn't game-breaking, but it was really hindering people's ability to punish Bakasura in the early game for its lack of CC. That
makes sense. I mean, you can't have it so that someone can really easily get ahead, and making it so Bakasura has to treat it like a normal Cyclops. That makes more sense. Good change.
It's a good change. It doesn't make it so it's impossible for Bakasura to get it, but it does make it so that it's now contestable against Bakasura.
He's got to do a bit more work, or he's got to be there to steal it from you, essentially. You can't just go in and get it. Okay.
And there are 3 more god changes. This one is more centered around the god's abilities rather than interactions with the camps.
The madmen.
Yeah. I mean, okay, we'll talk about the last 2 first, then we'll go on to the biggest one of them all. So the first one up is going to be Yanis. Obviously, recently they've changed global ultimate cooldowns. First, we've seen Apollo's Across the Skies recently get changed for 110 seconds. Athena's Defender of Olympus was the first one to receive this change. Terra's Blessing was the next one to receive this change. And now Yanis' Through Space and Time is also going to be put up at a 110 second cooldown.
It does put it up. I mean, Through Space and Time has always been an issue to deal with, hasn't it, really? You drop ship constantly. You can ult from base and away you go. You got halfway across the map. And being able to do that every 90 seconds, or what was it, 57 seconds with full cooldown?
I believe it was 56 with full cooldown.
Okay, so I mean, every 56 seconds, doing a dropship, that's pretty crazy. I mean, what's it go to now? That's 70 something.
I think it will do. Go down to. I don't want to do maths on stream. Go on.
But the cooldown's still going to be lower than 90 overall when you build cooldown. But I mean, upping the base cooldown is always a good thing for this one.
Yeah,
it's a start of putting Giannis in a more, I'd say, more balanced position overall. Well,
I'm not even going to get into the discussion about exactly where Giannis lies in terms of SPL level picks and bans. That could take us an entire couple of hours to go through if we're really going to go into
Giannis. Giannis is an interesting one, isn't he? Because in the pro scene, he's pretty decent. He's a pretty good god. But in the casual scene, like, people struggle with him, and I'm not sure why people struggle with him, because he's pretty straightforward. But people struggle from what I've heard about casuals.
It's really down to the fact that his kit has a couple of different ways to play it, and a couple of different ways you can punish it. And whilst with other kits, if you do action A, it will be punished through action B pretty straightforwardly. With Giannis, you have to think of the repercussions about putting one of your abilities on cooldown, and then your possibility of escape. Because before, with other mages, your escapes are you run away with your movement speed ability or your dash. With Giannis, you sacrifice your escape through walls. You sacrifice your setup if you do use your escape.
Yeah.
Which sort of hinders his ability to combo his abilities correctly, which can change how difficult he is, because you have to think exactly where everybody else is on the map at the exact same time. So it really is a lot of information coming into the Giannis player to be able to play him at an effective level, which you don't really get at casuals.
No, it's strange as well, because Giannis is a mid mage, and usually you get that sort of like, where is everyone, all the full awareness when you're playing a support or a jungle, and mid, you're not quite as used to having as much information, are you?
No.
So that's Giannis' change. On set to changing him to a decent position. And next up we have Susano.
Susano, he had a change recently where if he charged up his Typhoon, it would deal bonus damage depending on how fully charged it was, and it went up to 100 at all ranks when it was fully charged. This has since been changed because a lot of the feedback from the professional players was that at level 5, he was incredibly strong and basically impossible to deal with and get a free kill. Similar to what Bakasura was in the middle of Season 2, or the end of Season 1 as well. So now instead of dealing 100 bonus damage at all ranks, at max charge he'll now deal from 40 to 100 scaling per rank.
Yep, that sounds like a fair change. I mean, 100 damage at level 5? What?
Yeah, at that point, mages in the mid lane would have about 800 HP, 900 HP at most. So Susano's going to do 1/9 of your HP with one ability's bonus damage, not considering the base damage it had as well. It was a free kill on the mid mage for Susano at level 5. So changing it down to 40 does still give him kill potential, but it means he has to play a bit more aggressively to do so.
I mean, he's still going to be really strong in Season 4 compared to Season 3. After what they did to him when they first released him, I mean, he's definitely going to be a viable god still.
Yeah.
So,
and viability is certainly the name of the game when it comes to the final god change. It's Hercules.
Oh yeah.
Hercules. And I do like this change, but I do feel it is a slight overtune from where it was originally in 3.25.
It's definitely a buff. I think.
Like overall, it's a massive buff. To
yeah.
so. Yeah, you want to take us through this?
I can go for it. So, as we know in the previous, in 4.1, they were going to make it so that Hercules' mitigate wounds was going to be like a straight heal and then some protections, wasn't it? Well, now, because it's changed so much from what made it a unique heal, they've decided to change Mitigate Wounds again to try and retain as much of that feel as they could. So now Hercules will heal between 60 and 220 based on level, and it applies a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 protections for 4 seconds. Then, at the end of the 4 seconds, Hercules will instantly heal back 30 to 70% of the damage he took during those 4 seconds. That's crazy.
Yeah, one of the biggest things to take away from this is he does retain his percentage of damage taken heal that he had at 3.25, but instead of getting it back over time, it's now instant. So it sort of warrants that change from 90% to the 70% because the instant burst heal is stronger than that heal over time.
Yeah.
But the protection buff he gets on top of that to begin with, as well as the immediate heal of 220 rather than that heal over time again, it means that it's very, very difficult to burst down the Hercules without applying healing reduction to him consistently to stop him from activating mitigate wounds in between the procs.
I mean, that percentage is a bit lower than it is currently, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, it was 90% currently on live. It's now down to 70% here.
Yeah, so, I mean, when you consider that it's a slight decrease in his amount he heals, but it's also fine because he gets that increase in protections. So, trying to improve people being more aggressive, aren't they, here? So,
yeah. So they gave Hercules' mitigate wounds the identity of itself back, which is nice, but it's still right now slightly overtuned. So we'll have to see exactly where this puts him when he goes onto live, but I'm expected to see a bit more Hercules play.
I get the feeling that when they try and tune this down, they're probably going to lower protections a little bit.
I'd say that'd be a strong point because right now from Gauntlet of Thebes as well as Sovereignty and Heart Ward, you gain it was 50 physical and 40 magical protections or something like that.
Yeah. As
an aura, and then Hercules is gaining 50 physical and 50 magical protections just by himself.
Yeah. So
yeah, I definitely see it being toned down just a slight bit.
Yeah. But this is the Hi-Rez balance department, so whether they'll realise protections are probably where they should change is another question entirely. So, but yeah, those are the three god changes for round 2. Then we've got the relic changes.
Yeah, Hand of the Gods, Sunder, and the Sunder upgrade are seeing some changes. Hand of the Gods now deals jungle bosses for the same amount of damage as other minions. So it sort of gives it ability to damage the objectives, but it doesn't give it the massive secure that I had before of 1,250.
What's that give it? It's like 400 damage?
It gives it 300 plus 10 per level, which means the beginning of the game would be 310, all the way up to 500 at max rank. So
okay,
less damage than a mage ultimate pretty much throughout the game. So
yeah. You may still be able to steal it.
It increases its viability slightly, but not to the point where you're going to want to be picking this up again.
No. Okay.
Instead of Hand of the Gods, you're going to be wanting to pick up Sunder. At least you did in
you
the...
did want to pick up Sunder.
Now you would still want to, but you definitely will have to upgrade it to have its insane benefits. So original Sunder has now had its debuff amounts decreased from 30% to 15%. The Sunder upgrade keeps the damage increase at 30%, but it decreases the damage dealt initially to 40 plus 14 per level, and the cooldown is now at 90 seconds rather than 100 seconds. So overall, a damage decrease on both the Sunder and the Sunder upgrade, but a cooldown decrease as well to compensate on the Sunder upgrade.
That makes sense. I mean, if you're taking something away from it, you want to give it something back. I think so. 10 seconds down from that. I mean, that's pretty decent for a Sunder in the grand scheme, I feel.
I still think this is going to be one of the more used relics in Season 4, at the very beginning of Season 4, because at the end of Season 3, it was it reduces attack speed, and it reduces the damage that they deal, or reduces their protection, by 30%.
Yeah,
reduces their protections by 30%. And on Sunder now, it increases the damage they receive by 30%, which they aren't one of the same.
No.
And that's something which a lot of people haven't recognized. Decreasing their protections by 30% will not increase your damage by 30%. It will increase it by 10, 12% at most. whilst the 30% increase, that's a true 30% increase, meaning this was an overall buff. So Sunder, definitely going to be a relic you're going to be seeing a lot of. And now we're on to the item changes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've got, well, this isn't really a huge difference. Rallying Ritual, an issue has been fixed, where it could be interrupted if the cessation god was damaged or CC'd. And it now should only be interrupted if a god using the ritual is CC'd. That seems like a dick move, being able to stun the person they're going to instead of them, and then them having their thing cancelled.
Yep, and now it's no longer an issue. So you might see it, you might not. Games haven't really been going on too long at the PTS for everybody to be buying these rituals, so
I'm curious
best
to
of
see,
luck if you can.
I'm curious to see if we're going to be seeing some strats revolving around Rallying Ritual at some point. You never know, it could happen.
I think you might.
You might. I want to see that happen.
So now on to a Wind Demon. Of course, it recently had the attack speed added to the tree, which resulted in it being in line with one of the best curse items, if not one of the best items in the game. But it's now going to be receiving a power reduction from 40 to 30 to try and sort of advocate this change of increased attack speed.
It's still one of the most powerful items in the game.
It's still so stupid. You're still buying it on every Hunter build.
Like you wouldn't not buy it. I don't know why you wouldn't buy it. Soul Eater has also been changed. It's have its passive heal from 3% down to 2% of your max health.
Again,
is that much?
It's a good change.
I think lowering it a bit is probably a good idea. But a lot of people were building that, weren't they? For this one.
Well, they weren't really building it a lot because it didn't give you any power. You literally bought it for this passive. But the passive itself was working out to be a more effective tool than lifesteal against... if you're boxing against enemy players, you're buying this item to sort of get that better heal, get that better sustain than they would do with the Virus Gauntlets or Bloodforge. But now it's sort of going to be in line with those. Maybe just a slight, tiny bit more to sort of want you to buy this item, but at the same time punish you if you do get it and then don't box other people. Like, if you're just trying to clear away with it, then you're going to get punished.
Okay, so that makes sense. So good change for Soul Eater there. Then we have Talisman of the Relentless. Removed from the game.
It was never bought, so decent. So I completely agree with this. Rethink the item, rethink about what it's going to do, and then bring it back when you can.
Yep.
Rage is going to be the next on the list, and instead of removing it from the game as well, because it was also not so great, they instead tried to reduce the cost to 2,200 and increase the duration of the Rage buff to 8 seconds. Not going to be seen still.
It's not the problem with Rage. The problem with Rage is its passive is shite. That's the problem with Rage. Why would you buy it? You've got no reason to. So, at 2,200 gold with a buff for 8 seconds, you're still never going to see it because it's a useless item. Okay, next up, War Flag, which was originally labelled as ranked as mask on the patch notes, wasn't it?
Was originally.
They still haven't updated it.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
War Flag has now been changed, so its movement speed and attack speed bonuses now affect allies within range. This was a change which has been absolutely needed for this item because what warrior wants attack speed? They want to give it to the hunters, so that's now happening. And now War Flag might actually be a decent pickup for your more aggressive warrior supports.
Yeah, I mean, War Flag was something you weren't going to see, was it? Like, why would you want it? Making it so that it's an auto item so you can spread it out, that's just a good reason to pick it up now.
Yeah, it's now this item where you kill the wave, you get yourself your extra 6% movement speed and attack speed, and then you then kill the enemy hunter with it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Alright, so Fatalis Tier 2 has had its penetration removed. Hastened Fatalis had its gold increased, as well as Yonder's Wrath had its gold increased by 10, just to put it in line with the other gold changes, where it's now at either 50 or 100, so just a bit of minor balance there.
It makes sense, isn't it? Because they were one of the few items which didn't have a 50 or a double zero at the end, so now changing out to... It's only a 10 gold increase. It's like a couple seconds in base. So it's not a big issue at the end of it. Ethereal Staff has been changed though. It's had its internal cooldown increased from 3 seconds to 10 seconds. That's a huge increase.
It's a huge increase, but it's still an item you're going to want to be picking up at the Soul Reaver, because Soul Reaver still only does 10% every 40 seconds, and Ethereal Staff can do 5% every 10 seconds.
Yeah, so you can still do more with it.
You can still do more, definitely.
Yeah.
Soul Reaver, coincidentally, has had its description updated to indicate that it deals true damage rather than Ethereal Staff, which deals 5% extra damage as magical damage. So, again, might be an opportunity to pick up Soul Reaver, but for now, pick up Ethereal Staff.
Yeah, for now. I think they will change it again at some point to try and put them in line with each other, but
definitely.
And you can't change Soul Reaver though to be 40% at what every not 40%. What am I talking about? No, carry on. I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought with that.
Happens a lot. Heartseeker and Silver Branch Bow have had to receive some changes. Heartseeker fixed issues where the stacks were being consumed on minion hits. Silver Branch Bow has had its magical power debuff increased from 10 to 15. It's a change that was needed simply because magical power is more warranted than physical power.
Yeah. I think we go with it's the whole 30 physical power is the equivalent of 45 magical power, and upping it by that makes sense, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a slight change that was sort of needed to make it so that you're sort of getting an equivalent trade-off between you increasing your physical and then you decreasing that magical. I'm all for this change. Ranked as Mask, this is the aggressive jungler's mask, and it's seeing a change as well to try and reward that aggression in an earlier stage, where the first passive now only has to have 6 stacks to activate rather than the 8 stacks, and now they've also fixed a bug where you could sell it and still maintain the buff.
Okay, good job we got to that bug. Is there much use of it at the moment in PTS?
Not too much, because at the end of the day, you're still going to sell it for a better item, because 15% cooldown reduction, yes, it's nice. I think it was 10 penetration as well as some movement speeds as well. Yes, that's all very well and good, but the only real classes going to get use out of that are your lower mobility assassins that have high base power.
Yeah. Okay. So still a tier item, I guess.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme. Okay. Gladiator's Shield has had its physical power dropped from 25 down to 15. That was a bridge item, wasn't it? Gladiator's Shield.
It was more than a bridge item. It was like really strong item for your solo lane warriors, because if you think about it, right now people are building breastplates of valor on their solo lanes, because 2,300 gold, 75 physical protections, 20% CDR, done. They can't really kill you anymore. But now with Gladiator Shields, yes, it only gives you 40 physical protection and 15 physical power now. It was 25 before, now it's 15 with the change. But you also healed up 2% of your max HP every single time you hit an enemy god with your abilities, which meant that you were sort of offsetting that loss of protections from your Breastplate of Valor choice into Gladiator Shield.
Okay.
So it was a lot better. It was a much better item to get for that 600 gold cost decrease.
Okay, so still a good item.
Still a good item. Still item you're going to be seeing a lot of. I do think you will still see it being used as a bridge item though,
okay.
Where you do sell it later on in the game for something a bit more cost efficient.
Okay, that makes sense. So you still see it fairly frequently, but it won't survive until the end of the game in a lot of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
If it goes for long enough, anyway. Next up, Sands of Time has its passive change, increased bonus MP5 per 10% missing mana from 1 to 1.5. It's not a huge increase, but it's enough for an ability every 8 seconds.
Pretty much. It was probably one of the best mage starter items in the game. This, coupled with the change to Soulstone on the previous PCS build, means that it is the best mage starter item in the game right now. 10% CDR straight off the bat is quite ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's actually crazy.
Onto Spectral Armor, the item which, when damaged by a physical ability, you then gain the fear around enemies or for enemies around you for 1 second. It's had its internal cooldown increased from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. I don't agree with having 90-second internal cooldowns, because at that point
they're not used, are they?
Yeah, because at that point, you're not getting use out of it pretty much every fight. You're getting use out of it every other fight, which means for every other fight, you are an item behind.
We saw a similar thing with Magi's, and that kind of killed Magi's in the water, didn't it?
Yeah.
It went from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, and no one built it anymore. I mean, some people still do, but in the grand scheme, no one really bothers with Magi's. And
Well,
this
I think
is probably
Magi's right now is about 70 seconds, which has sort of hit that sweet spot.
Yeah. But 90 seconds for that is definitely too long. Definitely too long.
Magical Lifesteal is next up on the list in terms of 2 items, Pythagorean's Piece and Bancroft's Talon, one receiving a nerf, one receiving a buff.
Yep.
Money on which one's which.
They're buffing Pythagoreans, right?
No, but Pythag's Piece is receiving the nerf. Decrease the magical power from 60 to 40. Decrease the magical lifesteal from the item itself and the aura, both from 15% down to 12%. So overall, you are losing 20 magical power per person around you, and you are yourself losing 6% lifesteal, and the people around you are losing 3% lifesteal. Still a fantastic item.
Still a really good item. I mean, the changes should we go for the changes for Bancroft as well, because they kind of tie in with each other what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So with Bancroft's Talon, they've decreased the cost from 2,400 to 2,300, and they've increased the lifesteal from 10 to 15%. Now, what they're trying to do here is they're trying to make you choose between Pythagoreans or Bancrofts, aren't they? Do you want to improve your lifesteal, or do you want to still take a small hit but make it so that your entire team can lifesteal a bit more? And I'd still say, in the grand scheme of things, in 90% of the time, you're going to want to go Pythagoreans over Bancroft still.
Again, it's the Pythagoreans, and it's not because of the fact that it gives you power and lifesteal. It doesn't give you power, it gives you lifesteal. It gives you lifesteal to your allies, it gives you power and lifesteal to your physical allies.
Yeah.
It's also the fact that it gives you 10% CDR.
Yeah.
And if you get that plus Sands of Time in your first 2 items, from your starter item and your Pythags and boots, you are getting about, I don't know, see, this is going to be at 70, 45, so that's 105 magical power plus 20% CDR.
That's a good deal.
It's a fantastic deal for an early game.
It's a really good deal. I mean, so you're never really going to choose Bancroft over Pythagoreans unless you're being remarkably selfish. Pythagoreans just works out in so many other ways. Even though it's less power and less self-lifesteal in general, it's just crazy good Pythagoreans still.
What I do think, though, that this change sort of amplifies is the choice of whether to get a second Pythag's Piece for your team or for Bancroft for yourself. And now you will see people opt for the Bancroft rather than a second Pythag's Piece.
That makes sense. I mean,
so Which was what it should have been before, but before you could have 2 Pythag's Pieces, you'd still be happy with it because it was such a ridiculous item.
Yeah. So now you've got that option available to you now.
Yeah. Spirit of Desolation is also seeing a change. It's had its increase cost from 2,700 to 2,800. With that, you also have 10 extra magical power and 5 extra penetration, up to 80 and 20 respectively. And it's got its passive back, pseudo passive back.
Pseudo passive, yeah.
Yeah. Earning a killer assist subtracts 1 second from all abilities currently on cooldown. It has no internal cooldown on this proc. You're not going to see it still.
No, still not.
Moving on to Stone of Gaia.
That's our analysis for Spirit of Desolation. It's still shite. Okay, Stone of Gaia. So the passive for Stone of Gaia has had its 10% health and mana heal on knock-up has been removed. Good. And they've added a passive of regenerates 2% of your max health every 5 seconds.
So it still gives you the CC immunity if you're hit by a knock-up or a knock-back. Every, I think it was 60 seconds or 90 seconds. It's one of the two. But now it gives you the old Stone of Gaia passive, meaning it's a more attractive item, but at the same point, I don't know if we're going to be seeing too much of it. If you're against a knock-up heavy team, pick it up pretty much every single time. If you're against teams that rely on more traditional forms of CCs like stuns, slows, and roots, you're not going to see it.
I mean, at least you've seen it get its old passive back.
Yeah,
I like seeing the passive back.
The old passive was unique, the old passive was needed, and it's back in the game now, which is fantastic.
It was an interesting item. But to carry on, we've now got 2 more changes for items, which is a good thing here. Soulstone. Now, this is interesting. Soulstone no longer provides mana when consuming stacks.
Yeah, it is now used as a pure damaging starter item. This has sort of killed it in quite a lot of people's eyes because you want to be using it in conjunction with a lot of other abilities. You want to hit somebody with an ability, get that Soulstone passive proc off, and use your other abilities in conjunction with that within the next 3 seconds to kill somebody. But now you're no longer getting mana back. You're no longer getting any form of mana back from this starter item, meaning it's going to be very difficult to stay in lane without the use of mana potions or mana chalices.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have a harder time with Soulstone now, aren't you? Because you're gonna use the stacks and you go, cool, I can use these now, and then you're gonna have no mana left.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So something to be aware of. And then the last change for this round is Swift Wings passive effect will now fade when entering combat.
Yeah, it used to just go away straight away. Now it fades. So if you get caught out in between your tier 1 and tier 2s on your way to lane, you will slow down rather than just immediately grind to a snail's pace.
Grind to a halt. Just stop.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I believe that's called stunned.
It's stunned, is it? It's like a Kronos. Yeah. Kronos passive. Yeah, Kronos abilities, isn't it?
Well, those were the round 2 changes.
Yep.
They dropped on, I think it was Tuesday.
I think so, yeah. They did have a couple things on there as well. A few things for their to-do list, which were reevaluate which items are banned in which game mode, make additional adjustments to Skadi, and a new Conquest jungle buff being update in colour and name.
Yeah, because it currently uses the rogue name and the purple colour from the Season 2 purple buff, which was an attack speed buff.
Yeah.
And it currently is in use in the Siege map, so changing the colours sort of needed to not confuse some of the newer players into the game.
What colour do you reckon it's going to be? Can't be white, because that used to be passive. Can't be green, because that used to be a buff as well.
Well, they sort of got rid of those, so I think I'm not too sure what it's going to be. Because the purple buff makes sense. It makes sense of being a purple buff, considering that mage items that gave penetration, they're sort of bluish, purplish. So it made sense for it to be that colour.
I'm not sure what colour it's going to be then. Maybe white. No. White, maybe. Warnings, don't bite me. I don't know. I don't know what colour it's going to be. But yeah, that'll be changed at some point. But
make it black.
Make it black. Just paint it black.
Yeah.
Just to see no, I'm not going to say that line. That just sounds
bad. Almost got you with it.
You almost got me with it. I was so close to saying it. Jeez. Yeah. I don't want to get this podcast banned from the internet. Jesus Christ.
But since that Tuesday round 2 patch, there has been a round 3 patch which went down on Friday night. So last night at the time of recording, 2 nights ago for the summer release on YouTube. So this is a very small change which sort of tied together some of the more overpowered items or more underpowered items and brought them towards this middle ground.
Yeah.
So let's get to it. The items were what they really were going after here. No god changes. So Divine Ruin has its magical penetration decreased from 15 to 10. Need a change. 8 Poison Shuriken and Poison Star have had some changes as well. Decrease the critical strike chance from 15% to 10% of the 8-pointed Shuriken. And Poison Star decreased physical power from 40 to 30. All needed changes for these rather powerful and potent items.
Yep. Is it going to change how often Poison Star is picked up?
Nope.
Nope. You're still always going to choose... whatchamacallit?
You're still always going to choose Poison Star and Wind Demon on your build.
Okay, cool. Okay, we've done this change as well for Talaria boots or Traveler's shoes, depending on whether you're magical or physical. The effect that gains bonus gold will now only trigger if an enemy is damaged rather than hit. Now, this is confusing me because a while back, didn't they do this exact change?
They did it on Skadi's Calder.
Because I remember not being able to get that when I used Athena's Taunt ages ago.
Well,
because wasn't it because Skadi's...
Skadi's Calder was able to proc it, meaning she could go around to the beginning of the game with Talaria, with Travelers, and gain 150 gold at the very beginning of the game, and then build a very different build to a traditional ADC, and then just destroy the game because she consistently got lots and lots of gold. Yeah. but they changed it so Collar can no longer proc it, and I think it had an adverse effect on your gods like Athena. But they didn't change it to all of the gods. Like Kumbhakana was still able to get it through Mez.
Okay.
But now you can no longer do that. You have to actually damage them rather than hit them with a CC.
Because didn't it have a thing of you have to use a damaging ability as well? Or am I misremembering this? Because I'm sure that like Athena had a harder time earlier on using these.
Yeah.
I could have been misremembering, or it could have been a completely different season that I'm remembering. So. Okay.
But there are 3 other item changes to go through. Spectral Armor, small cost increase from 1900 to 2100. War Flag, the buff duration now has been increased from 3 seconds to 6 seconds, and it caps at 10 stacks. So just putting it more in line with a traditional sort of aura buff item. And the Shaman's Ring, the passive healing has been put in line with the rest of the items that are similar to this, and it's now at 2% of your max health and mana instead of the 3%.
Again, that's putting it in a similar ballpark to Soul Eater, isn't it?
Yeah, similar ballpark to Soul Eater and Warrior Shield.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a good change.
Yeah,
that makes
I like it.
That's fair.
So, overall, nice balance changes to sort of alleviate some concerns with the more potent items around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're still likely to see some things change ever so slightly before they come out to live. But for now, we've got some good changes going on.
Yeah, for now, it's a patch that I'm really excited to see go down onto live, and one that I'm pretty sure everybody else will be looking forward to playing on the Season 4 patch.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Am I.
Looking forward to getting my ass pushed in constantly.
Oh god.
I'm not going to be very very good at the beginning of this. And you're lucky you're not playing with me very often nowadays, so you don't have to deal with me sucking the entire time.
Well, when Season 4 patch hits live, that's when I'm be able to play with you again.
Okay, well, play with me, bro. Okay. Okay, so that's the PTS stuff all out of the way. And now we're on to our last topic of the show today, and that is drama. Yes, we've had some drama happen. It's been a little while now, hasn't it, in the making, this drama?
It happened like towards the end of last season, and it sort of spilled over and reared its ugly head again, more so in the past week.
Yeah, it's pretty, like, you're sitting there looking at it going, okay, what is this? And I had to get a lot of information given to me to figure out just what the hell is going on with this, and I still don't think I fully understand it. Whether that's because I'm an idiot, I don't know, but we'll worry about that later. And that's this, I don't know if you've heard about it, this is the Excel esports drama involving their Xbox team at LAN. So, AJ, do you want to give us some details on this, and we can talk about it, or at least give the information out to our listeners?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Xbox Regionals featured, I think it was 5 North America teams and 3 European teams. And one of the 3 European teams to go was a team called Excel Esports. They went over there with 3 players in the original roster and 2 substitute players because the other 2 had problems with their visas. They then get to the LAN, and due to the actions of one of their players, the captain, he was then handed a 1-year competitive ban from all Smite-related activities, which meant that their 6th and final person that they brought along, which was the manager for the Smite team, who hadn't played a game of Smite pretty much his entire career, had to sub in for him at the last second. And let's just say they didn't actually perform that well at all. But afterwards, a few details came to light about Excel and their players in terms of contract disputes, as well as sort of legality issues, to the point where Excel sort of reclaimed the spot for themselves due to the players who were at the LAN not abiding by the rules of the contract. And now it's just evolved into this huge, huge mess about whether people are going to be playing for Excel or not next season.
Mm. I mean, the stuff going on behind this is... It's not an ideal situation at the best of times, is it, this one? But with all the stuff that's happened, it kind of makes you worry about things, doesn't it? Really. So, I mean, the first issue was the first question I have is the two that couldn't go to LAN because of their passport. Surely, if you know that LAN is a possibility, you get your passport up to date. Like,
yeah, that has to be one of the worst excuses I think I've said about players not being able to go to a LAN is my passport isn't up to date. Like, if you're trying to become a professional player in terms of an esport, you have to make sure that you are able to travel off to other countries within a week or two if you're winning a tournament. Yeah. And if you're unable to do that, then maybe you should consider not playing at a top level until you are able to.
Yeah. I mean, I know the US is a weird one as well, because to get your visa and stuff for the US, generally you need to have like half a year left on your passport at least, from when you're going to be leaving the country, just in case. But I mean, even in general, if your passport's not up to date when you're doing this sort of thing, you probably should think about that before the tournaments even start, just in case. I know it's a bit of outgoing funds in order to get your passport updated, but sometimes you need to have that passport ready to do things. So
yeah,
that's a pretty bad one. Then the captain getting arrested in the US, that didn't help.
Yeah, the details of the arrest and exactly what he did to get himself arrested will not be known fully, except by the players that attended the LAN.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of different versions of the story going around right now, ones which which range from him doing something completely innocent to him being completely at fault. But either way, him getting himself arrested means that he is then unable to play competitively.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first time which he's gone to a LAN event and gone over the limits in terms of alcohol.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be going to events consistently, you have to make sure that you operate and command yourself with respect.
Yeah, and that's sort of about. I know a lot of these places, like you saw for the SWC, the World Championships, that a lot of the players will go out and they'll party after the matches and stuff, or go out and and it's what you do. It's a LAN, it's an event. You're gonna have an after party and you're gonna drink a little bit, but always remember to drink responsibly, because if you're drinking it out well in excess, and you've not got the ability to control yourself in that situation, that's entirely on you.
Yeah.
I think the captain got pretty lucky, didn't he? Where the embassy bailed him out of the charges. So he got kind of lucky there that he's not properly facing jail time in the US. But whether he's always going to be lucky enough for that to happen is another thing entirely.
Well, it depends on exactly what version of the story you believe. But again, that's something we're not going to discuss here, because we're not here to spread rumors.
Nope. So yeah, hang on with that then. So then we've got we've had a new jungler. That's fine, that makes sense. So now they're using 2 subs because of their for 2 people who couldn't go over because of their passports. But of course you've got no subs left over then. So when Thingy's arrested, their manager this is the other part. The manager who has never played he's played 1 game of Smite in his entire career. Whatever.
Yeah, he's not played a game of competitive Smite at like a ranked level or like a Smite console league level at all.
Okay.
Not even close.
Okay, that's just not a good situation to be in general.
Oh, they already had to take over 2 different. They had to take over like 2 or 3 new players, so it's just absolutely unreal the fact that this was a situation that they were put into.
It's kind of sad, isn't it, when you get down to it? Like, I mean, having a couple subs at the best of times is probably going to cause you some issues. Having your captain disappear from it and then having to replace it with someone who's not played at a top level before, I think you've essentially just got your chances of winning at that point are essentially nil, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I mean, you can play your heart out if you're one of the people who generally goes, but there's only so far you can go when you've not fully got the synergy there and you've not got the top level available to you.
Yeah, so he had to play through the games, and for somebody who hasn't played a game of competitive Smite, he did extremely well for himself, and he played with the sort of commendability that you want to have as the sponsor.
Yeah, he definitely did what he did what needed to be done, didn't he? So
yeah,
that's something to hold him up for. There is a fair amount of drama going on behind the scenes regarding contractual obligations, whether various people broke contract or whether the org themselves broke contract, and there's other things about pay and stuff like that. But it's probably best that we don't get into those, because we are primarily a show which discusses the players and how they play, as well as the game and how the game's changing. We don't want to get involved or anything in the business side of things in the grand scheme, I feel.
Yes, but I will say this to any aspiring player out there, and to anybody who is hoping to sign on with an organization in the near future. Make sure you know the fundamentals of the agreements, what constitutes breaking the contract, what the repercussions of breaking the contract are for both you and the organization.
Yeah. I think you should also pay attention to what your obligations are.
Yeah.
What you're expected to do, and what the org thinks is fair for you to expect them to do. Just remember that these contracts, they're all give and take. You're getting something in return for them getting something, and just bear in mind that when you sign this, sometimes there are a lot of people out there who sign a contract and they don't fully read it, and they don't know what's expected of them.
So just take care when you're out there, negotiating with an organization about whether you're signing for them or not. And if you can, have somebody there who is proficient in legal contracts, because that could save you a lot of time and effort later on down the line. Yeah,
I know. I don't know how you feel about DM in general, AJ. I mean, I'm not amazingly keen on the guy, but he does do contract. He looks at contracts for people, doesn't he? Esports contracts. So I mean, at the very least, get someone who knows about the contracts to look at it. Even if you don't understand it, they should be able to give you the gist of it.
And don't be afraid to ask for help out there, because we are at a stage right now in esports where a lot of orgs are popping up out of nowhere, and they're going to look to try and take you for a ride. So be careful, be safe, and make sure you know exactly what you're getting yourselves into before you put pen to paper.
Yeah.
And I believe that's our message for the week.
The message of the week, that's AJ. Nice work there on the message. Remember to record. I need to try chop that out and put it as its own thing. Put it on the Twitter account. AJ's message of the week. That should be a thing for us for the show from now on.
Oh god, gonna have to come up with a new profound philosophical message every week.
You gotta go with it, AJ. You gotta do that. Next week, I expect you to have done your homework.
Jesus.
But yes, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. This has been this week's Pantheon Podcast. Thought we'd finish on drama, but give you an insightful thing from AJ there. If you are interested in knowing what we're talking about this week, or if you've got any suggestions, or anything in general, if you want to just talk to us, you can tweet us at Pantheon Podcast on Twitter. If you want to get me personally, you can tweet me at Darkkai3. And if you want to get AlphaJackal, you can tweet at AlphaJackal. Both of us are on Twitch as well. I'm at Darkkai3, and AlphaJackal is more awkward. He's AlphaJackal1. Could you not get AlphaJackal?
No, somebody took AlphaJackal.
Damn, that sucks.
Yeah.
That's a shame, actually. But yeah, if you are listening to this you probably are listening to this on a Sunday, do go check out the Open Bracket NA, which will be tonight. We're going to go watch the EU one after this. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the show, guys. Tune in next week as well. We're going to have another good show. Same time, same bat place. This is goodbye from me, Darkkai3. Bye-bye.
It's goodbye from AlphaJackal himself. Goodbye.